Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Before anything else, I would like to invite all of you to join me in a unifying breath. So wherever you are located, nicely planted in your seat, if you are comfortable, please close your eyes. If not, no problem. I want you to exhale all that air out of your lungs. Inhale, fill up. Sigh it out, exhale. One more time, inhale, fill up. Exhale, sigh it out. Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. I invite you to make yourself at home and comfortable in your seats. My name is Fernie Rodriguez, and I have the pleasure of serving as one of the co-chairs for the planning committee of this event. I also have the honor of serving as the director of the Circle of Indigenous Nations and Multicultural Center for Academic Excellence here at the University of Minnesota. So welcome. Applause to you for being here this morning, right? On a Friday, right before a long weekend, and also a weekend that calls us to reflect on what liberation looks like for all of us. Right? In preparation for our time today, I have been asked to really think about how to acknowledge the land that we are on and the Native and Indigenous people whose genocide and removal allows us to be here today. In discussions, one of the things that I refuse is to have performities as part of this event. So in lieu of a land acknowledgement from someone who is a non-native, right, instead I offer you this. Today is about action. It is not about performance. I refuse performativity today. Instead, I call your attention to read the Truth Project report. And utilizing the text in this report, I acknowledge the truth about the land and the occupying institutions' histories of harm imparted on Native and Indigenous people that extends since before the founding of this institution in 1851. I acknowledge that genocide, financial gain, and forced removal of Native peoples and subsequent land grabbing by Congress and the U of M Board of Regents is what happened. With this knowing, with this truth, the report, which again can be found at the U of M website if you Google it, with this knowing, I want to take the time to amplify the report's call to engage in economic justice, and specifically one of the recommendations by these truth tellers. The institution and Board of Regents, a direct quote, must commit part of the annual investment in returns in a way that gives back to Native Americans in perpetuity. The truth report details that without adjusting for inflation, the revenue created by iron and taconite mineral leases between 1890 and 2022 totaled $191,875,315. Think about what that figure would look like today. So when I think about action and when I think about everything that we have won at the legislative level at this point, for American Indian students and Native and Indigenous students here in the state of Minnesota, one of the things that I know now and can appreciate deeply serving for the Circle of Indigenous Nations is that much of the added cost that creates barriers for these communities to be successful on this campus are not the tuition, are not the books. It is about the life that we want students to live to be successful so that they can make it to the graduation stage. The truth hurts. That's what you get. That's what you get. Please do read the report. Okay, So, few pieces of information. Make yourself at home. If you can, we encourage you to tweet about this event at MnEEP, ED, MnEEP, ED, equity, hashtag, okay? So again, thank you for being here. And it is my pleasure to introduce Ikram Mohammed, who is one of the co-chairs as well, and one of the planners behind this event and with the MnEEP organization. Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Ikram Mahmoud, and I am the College Race Equity Initiatives Coordinator for the Minnesota Education Equity Partnership, which we all reference as MnEEP. On behalf of MnEEP, I would like to welcome you all as we work to cultivate spaces like these to convene, connect, as well as reflect on advancing race equity in higher education. For each of these gatherings, we speak on the important issues and systematic barriers that students of color and Indigenous students face and what we need to change so that they are no longer facing these. This convening is a chance for all of us to share and learn from one another on building best practices, building these relationships, and figuring out how we can partner to make that happen. I would like to take a moment to thank the College Race Equity Advocacy Advisory Council, CREAC, members as well as the members who formed a subcommittee to make this convening possible, many of whom will be presenting today. Thank you for all that you do at your own institutions and at MnEEP to make systems be more racially just. The important higher education equity and access work could literally not be possible without you guys. So please give a round of applause to those in the room that made this event happen. Okay, before I talk a little bit about MnEEP, I want to take a moment to just do some quick housekeeping rules and different pieces so that folks know where things are and ways to locate things. So one, where are bathrooms? If you go out of these doors and you take a right, there are 2 unisex bathrooms, and if you keep walking, there's a sign that says main bathrooms, and to your right, there's a women's and men's, and they have a bunch of stalls in them. We will only have one break today, and that'll be from 12:15 to about 1 p.m. So we will not have another break, so please make sure you're taking care of yourself, you're stretching, you're doing whatever you need to do. There'll be coffee and treats throughout the day, so feel free to grab those as well as we go through this. And make sure you're taking care of yourself and being as present as you can for these critical conversations and connections, but obviously putting your needs first. So this agenda, the one that's on the screen momentarily, is what we will be going through today. So let's quick go through the rest of kind of what the event will entail. There are a few resources at your tables, and then presenters will be referencing these throughout the day. The one that I want to reference is the program, which is a tiny one that's on. Yep, perfect. I'm seeing you guys all grabbing those. That has the agenda as well as bios of folks that'll be presenting today. And on the back, it has all of the resources that one can need about MnEEP, so ways to navigate our resources, the website, how to become a member, and different means of taking action, which will be presented on a little more later. So please feel free to follow that along today. As you can all tell, we've started a little later, but that's okay. And as you have questions, like I said, reference that, and we can definitely continue to utilize that. And then as we continue to go, I'd like to talk a little bit about MnEEP, who we are, why we put these events on, and what that means for us. So I'd like to start with our mission and vision. MnEEP works to transform systems, structures, public narratives to advance race equity and excellence in education. We envision a racially just society in which each student achieves their full potential. Together, we can build equitable education spaces that uplift and empower Minnesota's people of color and Indigenous posse students and advance race equity and excellence in education. By means of doing this work, MnEEP does this work through big, bold goals. We call them BBGs, and there are 5 of them, with BBG 5 being our higher ed access and equity work. And the goal for that one is that Minnesota's higher education systems are transformed to be racially just, responsive, and accessible for students of color and American Indian students. And one way MnEEP transforms policies, practices, and narrative change is through statewide networks. These networks are composed of researchers, educators, policy analysts, district leaders, faculty, staff members, like many of you in this room, working together for a more racially just higher education system in Minnesota. And one of these networks, which I've touched on a little bit already, is the College Race Equity Advocacy Advisory Council, CREAC. It's a lot of acronyms here. A statewide multiracial advocacy group that was funded by the Joyce Foundation and has been working for 3 years to build policy priorities and center best practices, where we work to direct and advocate for new policies to advance race equity in Minnesota's higher education system. This is really a collaborative process where we work with race equity leaders across colleges, higher ed institutions, different higher education systems to build a platform for advancing race equity in higher education. And now I have the literal privilege and honor of working closely with our next presenter. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to MnEEP Senior Director of Research, Dr. Rev Hillstrom, and he'll set the tone for what the rest of the event will look like. Thank you.
Asio Tohoja. Thank you, Akram.
Sorry, 1 second. I would like to note one more thing so no one is surprised. Aspects of this event are being recorded. We will have breakout groups and sessions and opportunities to connect with groups. Those will not be recorded. Lunch will not be recorded. So opportunities where if you want to speak your truth and be as authentic as you like will not be recorded. It'll just be the keynote and parts like this where we are speaking will be recorded. So for those who could not attend or would prefer a virtual option can still see aspects of this event. And I also want to note that we have Noemi, who's in the back wave, who is the photographer today. She'll be going around taking pictures. If that is something you're uncomfortable with, please voice that, but she'll be taking just general pictures, group pictures. So I just wanted to make sure that I also introduced her so that if someone comes up to you with a camera, you guys know who that is, as well as there's a bio and a photo in the program agenda of her as well, just so that you can know a little more about her too. Okay, take it away, Rev. Thank you.
Thank you, Akram. Asio Tohoja, greetings, relatives. Good morning, good morning. Man, wow, this is good. Look at all these people. This is fantastic. I want to thank you each for taking time to be here. I don't do podiums well, so I won't be there. I want to thank Fernie as a dear brother and a sincere friend for the honor that he provided me by doing this and not making it the token Indian guy that has to talk about a land recognition. So that was incredibly kind and doing so much more than that. So thank you for that. I'm very, very deeply. We're going to jump into a conversation about liberation to continue with that theme, and we're going to look at possibly the main foundation from my understandings and learnings of why we have racially predictable outcomes, disparities, and systemic racism throughout our educational process. And I'm going to look at one of the primary things that help us establish that as we learn more about a concept of culturally validating pedagogy. That said, I want you to take, most of you are educators directly in the field. If not, you're obviously seriously connected to it and should be able to answer this question in less than 10 seconds. What is the purpose of education? This should not be rocket science. It was the question that was asked of me day one of my doctorate, class one. Very first question that came out of Frank Goldbranson's mouth from the University of Minnesota. Answer the question, write it down, please. What is the purpose of education? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are not doing an Elon Musk blast off and seeing things blow up. We're going to get this one right. So, was that hard to do? Was that hard to write down? For some of us? Right? You've actually been through this activity with me, so don't give them any secrets. I've seen you do this with me before. What did you write down? Who's willing to share a few things? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but I'm a spitter. Anyway. Well, I tried to think if I should be honest or...
Be honest as reading.
Okay.
Let's don't pontificate. Let's just read what we got and give me what you got.
The purpose of education is to prepare workers for the businesses.
Okay, see? Okay, there's one. Let's get another one. Just read what you got. Don't overthink it.
Learning, sharing knowledge, advancing curiosity.
Thank you. At least 3 more. Yes, I'm doing my best, Vanna White. After 40 years, I can still do it.
To teach white knowledge and culture.
Okay. All right, I'm going over there to one of my favorite people in the entire universe. If y'all don't know, I love this woman a lot.
I just wrote life.
You could have said that without maybe you could run all the way over there.
This made me think of my favorite Somali proverb, which says, "Aqwan al-an wa iftin al-an," which means there's no light without knowledge.
So we could go on and on and on. University of Minnesota, Day 1, Class 1, 2009. I was told the purpose of education was to convert the individual to a citizen. Here's what Woodrow Wilson offered in 1913. The great melting pot, the place where we are all made Americans of, is the public school. And if this isn't sexist just to begin with, right? Where men of every race and of every origin and of every station of life send their children to be infused with the American spirit and developed into the American man or the American woman. Now I want you to pause for a minute, and you wrote down what you believe the purpose of education was. Most of you probably work in educational institutions or support them in some way. Where do you have evidence in your current practices that you are supporting what you said the purpose of education was? And where do you have evidence in your institutions suggesting that this might be the purpose of education? I want you to write down 3 pieces of evidence that either support what you said the purpose of education was, or that you can point at that indicate this is actually at least a foundational part of your purpose. You'll find them if you're going to be honest. Bernie pointed out one of them just today. 30 seconds to write them down. Just write them down. I'm not going to ask you to share them yet. I probably won't. I just want this for your own reflection. Now I have another question for you. Please understand the nuance. The underlying word is critical. What is the purpose of education to marginalized students, historically marginalized, currently marginalized students? What is the purpose of education to that group? And how do you know? Write it down. You got 1 minute. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right? So let's hear from some other voices in answering this question. What did you write down? Oh, thank you. Actually, you know what? Let me suggest something that's really horrible about that pedagogically. You can hear me when I'm talking to you like this, right? Yes. Is it a different tone when I'm talking to you like this? Yes. So why in God's green earth am I going to yell at you for an hour and have y'all pissy me? Right? That's why we use a microphone. Pedagogically, it's a better approach.
To fit into a white supremacist model. Okay. Simple as that.
Yeah. That's simple, right?
Assimilation.
Assimilation. Yeah, no, come on. Thank you, Freddie. Who's got you on that side?
When you pointed out the two part of it, I was just thinking about what I wrote down initially, and my answer didn't change much, but I wrote down social and economic mobility and empowerment. But that's, now I'm reflecting on that word "to" more.
Okay, thank you. Bernie, can you catch that back corner and I'll catch this side? Would you be so kind?
Assimilation first. Second, erasure and diminishment of home culture. The third is survival and thrival in the dominant society.
How do you know this? How do you know this?
I know this because I'm an immigrant and I teach at a community college. Most of my students are students of color, first generation, and with all of those characteristics. I know that day in and day out because of my work. Thank you.
And sir, how do you know this? Because of your work, say more. Yeah, about your work. I don't know your work, I apologize. Thank you. So you're working with students and that's how you're gathering your information. So you're getting that information from those who work with students. See, now there's a disconnect already starting happening. Do you see what I'm saying? From the direct lived experience. I thought you were going to say, because I happen to be one, right? You know? Exactly. All right, do you see where I'm going here? The further we separate ourselves, the more it looks differently, right? And it's natural for it to look that way. Go ahead.
So I had to share and transform behavior through scripted knowledge.
Scripted knowledge, and that's the purpose to this group. So, are we starting to understand a disconnect? Remember I told you day one, class one, I was told the purpose of education was to convert the individual to a citizen. Man, I was broke then. Going to University of Minnesota Duluth, staying at a campsite in the summer, right, because I couldn't afford a hotel, right? And I went back, and I loaded my pipe, and this is a confusing thing when you look at me like, oh, what kind of pipe did he load? I know where some of you went, right? No, I loaded my ceremonial pipe and I prayed. Because I knew that morning, or that evening when I came back, by morning I was going to have to drop out of the program. Because as an indigenous person, there was no way I was going to kill the Indian to save the man. There's no way I could be part of that. And by morning, see, indigenous prayer, at least in my life, has been answered very differently. I come to epiphanies and understandings, and I understand that my ancestors give them to me when I submit myself to those processes. By morning, I woke up with a new understanding that my purpose in education was to equip the individual to determine what citizenry would look like. Paulo Freire, one of my heroes, offers this. Through proper education, you see, individuals transform themselves as learners, which provides themselves with the necessary tools to bring about a radical structural change that supports a democratic lifestyle. Right? Now, I want you to write down examples of where your institution's doing this. And I mean have evidence. You know it's happening. You can see it. And it's not just theoretical. It's not talk. It's action. And the real challenge, friends, is to go back to your institutions and recognize what your purpose is. Your purpose isn't what you wrote down on your mission statement. Your purpose is what you actually do. That's how you'll be able to define your purpose by. And as long as there's a disconnect between what historically marginalized students of color, indigenous, LGBTQ, English learners, I mean, the list can go on and on, right? We could talk about marginalized populations. As long as the purpose for that student group is different than your institution's purpose and or practice, we're going to have disparities. Because we haven't lined it in the lives of the students we are to serve. And this becomes the challenge. And through the report that you're going to learn more about later, we're introducing a concept that moves away from culturally, now listen very carefully, moves away from even culturally relevant and culturally responsive pedagogy into a new era of education that we call culturally validating pedagogy. Because we're still responding in these scripted to Rep's position on this, these scripted ideologies of what it means to know something, whose knowledge is of most worth. And we're still norming and conforming so we could get people, well, for God's sake, we got a bill called the world's best workforce. I just wrote like 40 pages on it, right? To get into the workforce. Not because of the centering, learning, the humanity for that individual. So we still use responsive and relative ways to convince others to have a different purpose, instead of recognizing that the ecosystem that each of us participate in is better with each of us. So today is going to be about challenging the purpose of education, and introducing you to a new idea on some of this, for me, the part that I get to play, of moving into this new era of culturally validating pedagogy and leadership. We can do it, but we got to change our purpose. So with that, I have the opportunity to introduce a student from Augsburg, part of the CREAC, Leroy Doe, has been part of the work that we've done over the last, gosh, a year maybe. That's when I first probably met you. And excited to have a student's voice here. I know he's from Augsburg and we're at the University of Minnesota, but hey, I'm the first American Indian to graduate from Augsburg College, 3.97 GPA, summa cum laude, and go get a doctorate. So give it up for Augsburg for doing something right. Leroy, it's your stage, brother.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. My name is Leroy, and I'm going to talk a little bit about honoring Juneteenth. So Juneteenth is a federal holiday commemorating the emancipation of enslaved individuals in the United States. June 19th, 1865, is the day the Union troops arrived to Galveston, Texas, and announced enslaved individuals in the state were free. Although President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation more than 2 years before, Texas was among the last states to end enslavement. Today, only a little over half of the states recognize Juneteenth as an official public holiday. Minnesota is the 26th state to make Juneteenth a state holiday. This year is the first year that Juneteenth is a state holiday in the state of Minnesota, thanks to Minnesota House Representative Ruth Richardson and State Senator Bobby Joe Champion. I want to emphasize... Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause as well. I want to emphasize that this is not just a day off. Juneteenth should be a moment of reflection on some of the darkest parts of American history. Juneteenth should also be a time of reflection on the many current injustices Black individuals face in America. It is important to note that Minnesota remains one of the worst states for racial disparities. And also, Juneteenth should be a time where we celebrate the countless contributions and innovations that Black individuals have brought into this world. With that being said, I implore you to engage with Black stories that document the abolition of slavery. These stories include Beloved by Toni Morrison, Envisioning Emancipation by Deborah Willis, and Grace by Natasha Dion, and so many more. This is a very, very limited list, I might add. So I also implore you to look at more books and engage in more text and more Black authors. During Juneteenth, I also dare you to engage in hard conversations that you maybe have shied away from. And on Juneteenth, I dare you to reflect on what this holiday means. If you are looking to engage with Juneteenth holiday in a more interpersonal way, I suggest you attend some of these events. These events include U of M 2023 Juneteenth celebration in North Minneapolis on June 17th from noon to 6 p.m. Soul Bowl is also having a Juneteenth event on Juneteenth from 4 to 8. And even the city of Bloomington is having their very first Juneteenth celebration at Kennedy High School starting at 11 a.m. So if you're in the area, I recommend you stop by, maybe take a picture of these slides and see if you can attend any of these events.